motion to approve the agenda with flexibility.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Next up, we've got our introduction of guests. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Superintendent Owens to do our introduction.
Great, thank you. I'll go ahead and actually turn it back over to Principal Miller, who will introduce our presentation this evening. I understand that we have a variety of student recognitions this evening, so as Chair Solowski noted, it's great to see students and families in the house tonight, and looking forward to having the opportunity to recognize your accomplishments.
Thank you, Superintendent Owens. We are very proud tonight to present both some of our scholarship winners. They're excelling and showing what it means to be an Eagle, and then we will also have drama and band awards because they're just doing awesome. So let's turn it over to Mike Henderson, College and Career.
Thanks for having me again. I was here a couple months ago and talking about some outstanding students. So tonight I'm going to be talking about two more. Is Nick Casada Bautista's parents here or brother? Okay. So yeah, unfortunately, Nick could not be here tonight. As the story goes this morning, when I called him in to double check on his name pronunciation, he mistakenly showed up at 6:30 this morning here, and I said, "You were probably here by yourself then?" And he's like, "Yep." And I'm like, "Well, hey, nice early riser, you know, that's kind of kid he is." But he did mention that his dad and brother might come tonight, so here they are. So I'm going to talk briefly about Nick. Nick is a senior at CHS, and he's been awarded a scholarship called the Renaissance Scholarship. This scholarship provides financial support to hundreds of first and family college students in the amount of $5,000 a year for 4 years, which is a total of $20,000. Nick is planning on studying mechanical engineering, most likely at Oregon State University. With a 3.891 GPA and high-level classes at CHS and his participation in the College Possible program, Nick has positioned himself to be ready for the rigors of college. Nick also found out recently that he is a finalist for the Ford Family Scholarship. If he is awarded this scholarship, it will pay for any unmet financial need at the college he chooses, up to $40,000 per year. For all intents and purposes, it will be a full-ride scholarship for Nick if he receives it. So he interviews, I believe, on April 25th at the high school over Zoom, and so he's excited about that, and he's just a pleasure to know and to work with Nick Bautista. Amin is also a senior at CHS, and she's been awarded Oregon State University's Presidential Scholarship. This is the most prestigious scholarship that OSU offers. It's awarded to very few students and is an amount of $10,000 a year for $40,000 over 4 years. Hania plans on studying to be a dermatologist, so she has a lot of schooling in front of her. While in high school, she's done a lot to set herself apart from her peers. To mention a few, she attends Cal and their medical program. Since 10th grade, she has participated in the Minds Matter program, which is a college enrichment program. She attended the NSLC pre-college program at Cal Berkeley, and she participated in the Syracuse University summer medical program. And these are just to name a few things. In addition to the OSU Presidential Scholarship, Hania also found out recently she's a recipient of the Links Incorporated Scholarship, recognizing scholastic potential, high achievement, and leadership ability. With a 4.0 GPA, she is still weighing her options of Oregon State, Carleton, St. Olaf, Northeastern, and Hamilton. I tell you, if you don't recognize the names of the schools, that means they're prestigious private schools. So a couple of them in Minnesota that she's going to visit this weekend, she said. So great student, great young lady, Hania Amin.
Next, we're going to turn it over for a drama presentation.
Thank you. Got it. Hello, hi. So I'm a little sick, so I apologize if I start coughing. Hopefully that will not happen. So we have some students here that participated in the regional acting competition in February. That is our qualifier for the state competition. The thing I think that I'm most proud of is that, we've been a halftime program for about 15 years now, and we've continued to have excellence from our students. They've continued to do well at competition. despite the numbers. And so I'm really, really proud of them. This year we had 26 of our 31 teams that competed qualify for nationals, which means that they received at least one superior score. And because you don't actually have to go to state to go to nationals. And unfortunately, it's just really expensive. It's in Indiana. They just moved it. It was in Nebraska. Now it's in Indiana. And so, it's a couple $1,000s to go. So that's why, usually we don't attend. But that was really exciting, though, to have 26 of 31 teams. That says a lot about our program. So, while we're not recognizing all of those students, I think that's, something that I'm really, really proud of this year. So, we do have some students, though, that received recognition. A couple of them couldn't be here tonight. In solo acting, Sarah Johnson received a regional finalist. And also in solo acting, Audrey De La Paz. I'm gonna stand. I don't know. Do you want him to stand to be recognized? Like, would you like him to do? Okay. And I'll talk about Audrey again in a minute. But the thing that's so frustrating is that actually Sarah and Audrey both received 59 out of 60 points, which is super, super difficult to do, and they did not qualify for state. That's how competitive it was this year. So like when I go back to the fact that we had 26, qualify for nationals, that's a pretty big deal. And unfortunately, it's only the top 10% that go on to state. So, there were about 100 kids that competed in solo acting. So, to get a 59 out of 60 and not go, that says a lot about the competition and how tough it was this year. So, Audrey was also a regional finalist. Nicole Allen was also a regional finalist in solo acting. And she got a 58 out of 60. So again, they all did real poorly, right? No, they did great. And then we also had a couple of our novice students, our freshmen, receive a regional finalist. So in the novice categories, only the very top 4 goes on to compete at state, and they have to actually compete against the experienced kids at state. So this year, our duo acting, Riley Moore and Ben Anderson, they were regional finalists and did really great. And again, our freshmen, so our future here is definitely bright. So then qualifying for state, we had Francis Stewart, and Francis couldn't be here tonight, but he qualified in solo acting, and again, with a 59 out of 60, which is great. And then Audrey also qualified in solo musical, and so really got recognized in 2 different events, but made it to state in solo musical. And so let's give her a hand clap. And again, solo musical is another one of those really, really highly competitive, like 100 kids compete in that in our just in our region alone. So another really highly competitive thing. And this last weekend we attended the state competition and conference, and both Audrey and Francis performed. They both did a fabulous job. They absolutely performed to the best of their ability. They did not in showcasing. They only picked 2 out of every category to showcase, so it's really tough to do that. And they sure made me proud, and they should be making me proud as well. If I can put in, most of these kids, actually all 4 of these kids are involved in musical coming up at the beginning of May. We're doing Little Women, and I really, Melissa, you guys just encourage you. Just come see what these kids do. It's amazing what they do. And that's not to toot my horn, that's to toot their horns. They are worked. We just literally came from rehearsal. We were just there for 3 hours, and we came straight here. They give up a lot of their time and effort to be here. They work really hard, and I'm always blown away by how professional they are, and just with such grace. So, and next year's my last year. I will be retiring next year. So, I'm so excited. So, all right. Thank you for having us. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And for our last presentations tonight, Bree Tylacker, our band director, couldn't be here tonight. But one of the things that she really wanted to honor was the growth of her program and the students that are helping it grow, especially if you know what happened after COVID and the devastating effect that had on the performing arts. Every high school in the state is sort of in that same boat where after COVID, there was a great effect, and then you're just rebuilding the programs. And so Ms. Tylacker has been working hard on rebuilding her programs, and she wanted to honor particularly 4 of her students that have been in band for all 4 years, and our seniors graduating this year that have done outstanding work. So I want to go ahead and read their names. Ray Anderson, Ben Hendrick, let's give him a round of applause. Anthony Wood, give him a round. And Kyle Warner, give him a round. So we want to again honor all the band students and the growth of that program as it continues to develop, and they are doing outstanding work. And so those are the students we'd like to honor tonight because they are showing what it means to be an Eagle.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys all coming in and the staff for putting this together. It's definitely something that we've asked to see more of is student recognition, especially outside of like, we often hear the sports teams and that kind of stuff. And so I'm just so glad that you came in today. I have senior shows and I will definitely be coming to Little Women. But yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you, the work that you're doing, getting our kids ready for college. I mean, it is so hard to be, you know, a 17-year-old. I don't, you know, I am assuming because, anyway, I digress. Great job, all of you. Thank you very much. You should all be very proud of yourselves and of your students. And for those who couldn't be here today and are potentially watching, congratulations from all of us on your hard-earned achievements.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Thanks, everybody. Welcome back. Next up, we'll do the approval of the minutes from the March 12th meeting.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second?
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The meetings will be logged. Next up, we have public forum, and I did not see anything come through. No? Okay. Moving right along to reports. We're going to start, looks like we've got, would you like to introduce the next report?
I will. Thank you, Chair Selesky. So as part of our strategic plan, Roadmap 27, we have a trimester update that we provide, and we also collect data and information to help inform our progress. And so I am going to welcome our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Katsuda, as well as our consultant, Laura Klafke, with Performance Fact, who is joining us virtually, and they are going to walk us through this evening's presentation.
All right, thank you very much. It's great to see everyone this evening. Thanks, Lauren, for joining from the East Coast as well. Just want to share before we get started that after tonight, the information that you'll be seeing visualized for you will be available on the website in our Excellence Target section of the Roadmap 22 website page. So it'll be public after tonight. Okay, so I'm not going to cue this up too much because I think Lauren will get us rolling here. But as you know, we've committed to providing updates on the excellence targets and answering any questions you may have regarding that. And Lauren has joined us to facilitate that process. Thank you.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you this evening, and I look forward to presenting the Excellent Targets update. The purpose of the presentation is really to ground in understanding where the district is currently in relation to the 5 goals that were established as part of the strategic planning process. To understand what progress has been made over the course of this year so far, over the first 2 trimesters in relation to those goals. My intention is to walk through each of those to make sure we address any questions regarding the data, any additional data that might be helpful for you. You can share those requests and we can work on further diving in, because oftentimes data conversations lead us to have more questions. And then any questions that get sparked for you regarding the work, the implementation of the strategic plan across the district, we wanted to give you an opportunity to bring those forward and forth in this space. So I will go ahead and share my screen. And there we go. I believe it's up there. I believe that you have the 5-page, let's see if it's 5 pages. Yes, the 5-page CSD dashboard in front of you. We'll walk up here just to kind of see where we are in relation to the data points that we'll go through. And my intention is to kind of take each goal in turn, if that's all, unless there's a preference to walk through all of it and do questions at the end. I thought it would be helpful to just take the goal one and then see what questions emerge from that, and then we'll proceed to the next goal. So goal 1 is focused on building a strong foundation pre-K through 3rd grade, ensuring that each student in kindergarten through 3rd grade will develop the foundational academic and social emotional learning skills necessary for future success. There are some particular indicators or measures of that goal that were selected to be the focus of the data monitoring process. Although I will elevate that there are additional measures in the full plan that are not represented in this dashboard. So the focus of this, there are two different data points that are being presented. The first is regarding progress on English language arts for third graders. What you'll see on the left of the display is the current percentage of students who are meeting that standard across the third grade. So 38% of students are meeting the English language arts standard. And it also will indicate what assessment is being used to gather that percentage. And this one is the February STAR reading assessment. Across the top, you will see the baseline, which is the grade 3 spring OSAS assessment. And that was at the end of the 22-23 school year, 28% of third graders were achieving grade level standards on OSAS. Then you'll see the data in the other kind of slate blue column as to where the data point was in November when we were last presenting the data to you. And that has 40% of students in grade 3 for the November STAR. And so if you take a look at the February STAR assessment, you can see that there's been a slight decline of 2 percentage points in terms of the percentage of students overall who are at meeting third grade standards on the STAR assessment. Down below, you'll see the disaggregation of student groups, both race and ethnicity, as well as English language learners and students with IEPs. You'll see the differential in the percentages, and those are all on the most recent assessment. Those are on the February assessment. The green dashed line indicates the excellence target that was set for the end of the 26-27 school year. So in 2 years, 2 years and 1 trimester from now, was the stretch target, the excellence target that was set for the district to aim for in terms of moving forward students' proficiency on this assessment. The same data set is repeated below, but for math. And so you'll see on math in third grade, currently with 35% of students met the standard on the STAR assessment. You'll see the OSAS comparison again, the grade 3 report from November, and then the February, the current percentage. So I thought I would we can pause there to see if there are any questions regarding kind of just the data or the information or wonderings around this data regarding the third grade before we move forward.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Please, Director Andrews.
Hi, Lauren.
Hello. There you
How
are.
are you?
Good.
So you said that the target was set for the district, but I thought it was set by the district. Am I just kind of quibbling on semantics?
Yes, sorry, it was semantic. I apologize.
Okay.
Yes.
I know I can remember very distinctly being disappointed that the targets were not more aggressive, and so were other members of the district, but the state kind of negotiated those targets, as I recall, and said.
Yeah, they're directly tied to the integrated guidance goals that we have, which then were also informed and guided by the state.
Right.
It
So
was
a
in
much more
theory,
involved
they
process.
are achievable.
Yes.
So do we think with this data that we've gotten the results second trimester, that those targets are still achievable in 2 years? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I would add to that response, and I'll see if Lauren and Dr. Katsuda agree with this assessment, but I think overall we're seeing our stronger growth in our primary grades, which is an indicator for us that trajectory should hopefully hold as those students matriculate and continue within the system.
Kids in third grade now, not in school.
Yeah. And I know you can't necessarily see this in this really broad, high-level data, but the STAR assessment is a computer adaptive assessment that we we have progress monitoring as well as benchmarking, which happens almost about every trimester. But the concept behind that is the actual content or the rigor of the assessment goes up because students will have, in terms of grade level growth and where we expect them to be at the end of the year. So the fall assessment is not at the same level in terms of expectations around competencies that the winter assessment would be, and then the spring assessment would then assess where they should be at the end of the year based on the growth. It gets progressively more difficult, just so you know, it's adaptive test as well. So as a student takes the assessment, if they seem to be answering problems correctly or responding accurately, then the rigor of the assessment adapts to that as well. So assessments got a little more sophisticated, but that's not necessarily reflected versus an OSAS is a very static one-time assessment that measures where a student is in that moment in time. Right, so
Was the one on top the OSAS?
no, OSAS is the bar to the far left of the
okay.
ELA top 3
Great.
bars and math top 3 bars.
That was the 2023.
Yeah, and so that's why I was curious about like that one that went down, the first one, the ELA. So that makes sense that if it's not that fewer kids were actually meeting benchmark, it's that the benchmark went up. And well, I mean, so it's few. I mean,
Percentage-wise, the percentages went down, which is not the same as saying we had more or less kids. It's the percentage of the whole number of students who took the assessment,
Okay.
right? So, and we dipped both in language arts and math by a couple percentage points.
please.
As we move forward with this dashboard system, are we going to phase out the OSAS and have it just be STAR and then secondary to that? Because it is difficult to have apples and oranges. They're very different assessments. But then also, say we look at this next year, are we going to have last year's data and this year's data? That's more informative for growth than just looking at the fall and spring. If we could look at them next to each other year by year, I think we would see more of a trend if we're on our 2-year goal. So those are my 2 questions.
Well, it's interesting you should say that because Lauren and I were talking about that very thing. Is it beneficial for us to see OSAS next to STAR assessments because they are a different measure used for different purposes, right? So it is like mandarin oranges to, I don't know what other kind of orange, sumo oranges or whatever, right? So it's a little different. And I don't know, like the intention was to continue showing the pattern of the data through the dashboard. So we haven't actually specifically gotten to this part, but in my mind, I was thinking we would show OSAS for every year of our plan and all of the measures for STAR for the terms from here on forward, for the length of our strategic plan.
Yeah, because I think it would glean more information by not comparing these 2 things next to each other. It's not unless you know the OSAS test and you know the STAR test, like you're not going to glean as much information out of that unless
Yep.
you have them next to each other year after year
Yep.
and seeing the growth.
Yeah.
Speaking
That's a good
as, like
adjustment.
someone who doesn't study these tests, like you're going to get more information if we see them that
Yeah,
way.
that's right. Lauren, do you want to?
Oh, yeah, no, I just think
response?
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had the same thinking, and really it's about the showing the growth over time, so, yeah.
I think that just to kind of bring both comments together, one of the reasons that OSAS was still included, and I like the idea of having both but keeping them separate so you know you're comparing the same things, is that in your integrated guidance, the measure is OSAS. So just to note that that's the state measure.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay.
Jess?
Yes, seeing this data, it's not where I had hoped we would be, and I think that's just a general consensus across the room. So is there changes to implementation that we need to make? And if so, what are those changes? Do we need, what do we need to do differently? Because we got a long way to go on a couple of these goals.
Yeah. Tasha, do you want me to share a little bit about what the school sites are doing and
Yes,
then
please. Yeah, and then I can
jump
continue
in?
with the
Yeah.
response.
So absolutely, you're kind of hitting the nail on the head that the data is a reflection of the efficacy of our practices, right? The efficacy of our teaching and leadership and organizational practices, right? And so what's currently happening is that your school-based leadership teams they've already come together. They've done a root cause analysis looking with their leadership teams, looking at this data. They did this in March, and they've developed action plans that are really focused on recognizing that there are 12 weeks remaining when we came together, and that is still a significant amount of time to make a market impact on the trajectory of students that we have in front of us right now. I would say that the school leaders and their teams shared your sense of urgency and concern about the rate of growth. I would say how I would characterize what I'm seeing, with the exception of the math data at grades 4 through 12, is that you're pretty much keeping kids moving along at where they are. So that still is some growth, as Tasha said, like the assessments are getting a little bit more challenging, so there's some growth, but we're not yet accelerating the growth and learning for students who are not yet at grade level. And so that's was really the focus and conversation of like, how do we recognize that if a student is, a few years below grade level or below standard, and we just move them along 1 year from where they are, they're never going to close that gap, right? So there has to be something different. So each of the schools have developed their plans that they're implementing. And so that's what I want to share regarding kind of the work of across the board implementation. But Tasha, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, that is a great question, and we share this sentiment as well. I think there's some big work in front of us, as usual. Since the start of the year, there's been big work, and it continues to be big work. We've invited Lauren back to a couple of our administrator meetings before our last meeting of the year, where we usually solidify our school improvement plans as we move into the following year. And it's going to be an ongoing question as to, are we implementing what we said we were going to implement? And going back and really thinking about the impact of that practice if we have, and why we're not seeing growth and up. It's an indicator that we need to shift practice if we're implementing it, it's not working, especially if we've implemented over time different practices that we believe would have an impact. And so this is another indicator for us to continue to look and examine the work and revise and or determine that we're implementing and we need to continue down this road. It needs to take, whatever we're doing needs to take a root a little bit more in terms of learning. As learning is not a linear, doesn't have a linear line. Learning is not linear, right? And so it's just a matter of us continuing to examine the work and think about the systems that are in place and whether or not they're supporting them. So there's some work ahead of us, as usual, on this. So I don't know if that answers your question. Sort of.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best you could answer the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have some insight to offer as well, if you don't mind. I would offer, and Lauren and Dr. Katsuda, feel free to weigh in on this assessment as well. I don't think it's for a lack of trying, and I don't think that it is something where we want to lurch to different strategies immediately. I would say that I'm in every school at least once a month, and I'm in classrooms in every school every month. I've probably visited 200 learning spaces over the course of this year. And I would say that there's intentionality in terms of how leaders and leadership teams are working within their school, and they're continually iterating their practices based upon what they're learning. So at the most recent data summit, they're taking a look at the information, they're assessing what they're currently doing, and then they're pivoting and adjusting for the last 12 weeks. What I would also offer is that there are some bright spots that are emerging in our school system, which I see as, you know, you liken to, you know, it's spring now, there are certain things that are budding, and it's like, okay, so that's working. And so I see where that, and I get frustrated with the level and rate of progress as well. And so bright spots can become frustrating to me, because if we go back to our equity audit, it indicates that there's inconsistency of practice, and I still see that when I'm in classrooms. There's inconsistency in terms of what we're intending to do versus what's happening. And there's bright spots happening in individual classrooms, and there's bright spots happening in terms of how schools are organizing their systems. I would say Patrick Lynch Elementary is an example of that, in terms of how they're using their primary team in their PLCs, and how they're using their reading specialist, instructional specialist, to do a co-teaching model. And so Lauren maybe can speak, because I think you work directly with that school, in terms of the strategies that they're employing. But then what happens is when we bring our administrators together, they're sharing and seeing, okay, this is working over here. Let's look over here and see what they're doing, and see if we can add some replicability in that practice across our system. And I would say that's one example, but I see that taking shape amongst our system as well. And so while the results are frustrating in terms of where they are, in terms of how we're organizing and adding attention to our systems, I find that more encouraging. Lauren, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I would add that it was clear in this last data round that there are some, as we say, I would call it like game-changing results that are happening. I think it's I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was first grade in Patrick Lynch, if I have the grade level correct.
Correct.
And so something that we highlighted and, you know, was explicit with the schools, the elementary schools in particular, that I'm supporting, was like, there is a clear structure and system of kind of way of the teachers collaborating, working, what they're focused on, what that rapid kind of feedback is, assessment of where students are at, and making adjustments in classroom like every 2 to 3 weeks. That's having a significant impact in spite of it being a grade level with really low attendance. So we can see the proof point of what's possible when you have really intentional aligned, high quality instruction and collaboration happening together with a team who's really taken ownership of moving the needle on learning for this cohort of students. So there was a lot of energy just in, you know, Leslie should be the one who should talk more about this directly. But, you know, people saw those results and were texting her, the principals, being like, what's happening? You know, so I think part of the continued look at the data is that people want to improve it. And so that's a big shift from when we started looking at data, you know, a year or so ago, where there was just a lot of questions about the data and questioning of the data, right? And so I think that what's not yet showing up is the impact of that shift, but there definitely is a shift in the desire to move the needle on this work. There was always the desire to move to support children, right, and to support students in their learning and growth, but to recognize that this is a way for us to move forward and to accelerate learning, I think is a shift that we've seen over the year in terms of the teachers and staffs participating in the data summits. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we see in May.
Yes, thank you. Other questions?
Yes, thank you. I don't want to gloss over the fact that we do see double-digit improvement, both English literacy and the math. But I share everyone's sentiments, and my questions were right along the lines with Jess's. Like, and I guess mine will go a little further into: is there a mismatch between curriculum and the assessment content? And is that kind of what we're speaking to, right? Kind of like, hey, we're assessing and readjusting and adjusting, or was there just a huge gulf between the two to begin with, and now we're maybe essentially catching up based on the improvement we're seeing, but not quite there yet.
I would say the curriculum we've adopted is adopted with the criteria that it actually meets the grade level standards. How we implement and how we teach, the method in which we teach, our pedagogy, is critical in that. So I would say not a mismatch with the curriculum, but how we facilitate the learning process is critical, and that is our big area of growth, right? And so, in essence, that's a lot of what we're talking about, is how we're teaching, not necessarily what we're teaching, because we've adopted grade level curriculum. Does that answer your question?
It does,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Thank you.
That's great. These are great questions. Anything else on this before we take a look at the survey data?
Please continue.
Okay, great. And nobody gave me a time frame, so feel free to let me know if I need to move us along, but this is great. So the next goal 2 is around students' well-being and inclusion. So feeling a sense of belonging, feeling safe and supported as learners. And so there are 2 metrics that we're tracking for that. The first is around the perception survey. What you'll see is the elementary student results on the left and the secondary, that's middle and high together, on the right. You'll see the overall arc is kind of what percentage of students on the survey were reporting positive perceptions of safety, inclusion, belonging, kind of in the aggregate. So 86% of elementary students and 55% of secondary students. You'll see the target, which is again that excellence target. The stretch target is below. In the detail, it has the baseline data, which is from the 2023 survey, and that's in the shaded yellow here. And then you'll have the fall administration, the most recent winter administration. And then when we come back together at the end of the year, you'll have the spring assessment as well. And then there's the target laid out. So you'll see the actual questions that were asked and the percentage of positive responses from those questions, and the targets. So for example, I feel like I belong at the school. Elementary school students in 2023 were at 83.6% of students responded positively. In fall of this year, they were at 90.2% of students responded positively. And then in winter, the most recent assessment, they were at 88.5% of students responding positively. I will note that it's typical for us to see changes in engagement at different points in the school year. And so if we're looking at an apples to apples assessment, we're looking to see kind of how does that spring assessment compare to the baseline, back to the baseline from 23. So that's the one set of data. And then the second is looking at regular attendance. And this is just to give you a sense of where things are at. The baseline for regular attenders, and this is for students who have attended at least 90% of days of the school year across the district. We're just, at the time of this data poll, we're at just about 60% of students. In November, we were at 64% of students, and the baseline from the 22-23 school year was 54. Typically, you'll see a decline. Although there are, again, some game-changing data sets at particular schools where they have reversed that decline to be an increase of student attendance, particularly at the elementary level. The next one is, and I'll stop after this one, but it's also student survey data, so is around student voice, empowerment, and leadership. And so right now, there are 3 survey questions that are connected to, as well as engagement, that are connected to engagement in the classroom. And this is the overall percentages for those questions. And then finally, students' perceptions of voice, empowerment, and opportunity to contribute to change. These are the questions that are part of the progress monitoring survey connected to those. When we do the April assessment, students are taking or the spring assessment, students are taking the full battery of all of the questions, but these are the select progress monitoring questions. So I will stop there and take your questions.
Thanks, Lauren. Please, Dr. Harden.
Yes, why, and this could be an easy answer, I don't know. Why is there a natural decline as we get further into the school year to attendance?
Spring fever.
That's a good question. I don't think that I could give you a data-based answer. It's more of a informed by experience answer. What you'll usually see in attendance rates is that at the beginning of the school year, you have some of your highest attendance. And that over time, students get sick, they miss more days, they go on, trips. There's various things that come into impact, and that's just more. I would need to actually pull research to give you a better data-based answer on that.
I'd say
And I've had
Lauren's
a-
answer tracks. I mean,
Yep.
you stop for a second and say, that's the trend,
Yep.
but why is it the trend? And it's some of the
Yeah.
factors.
Yeah.
I mean, kids show up to school in earnest at the beginning of the year, and then things happen, and that tapers off, and that's a trend that we see over time. I'll also recognize, just for note in the room here, we picked an evening to present that our curriculum director, Mo Callahan, and our Director of Student Services, Denise Ryder, not available, and so I think that if they were here, they could help round out some of the answers that we're providing as well.
Will we have access to the disaggregated data as far as what I'm curious is looking at is the trends with the 3 upper level schools, the 2 middle schools and the high school? Is there a wide variance in the belonging kind of feelings at one school versus another school?
Yeah, we can share that with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think my comments along with what Jess and a lot of other people are saying, we're wondering why, what are the barriers, and how can we then identify those and do something about it? Why are we having less than 50% feel safe in the schools? Why are less than 50% saying that nobody asks them how to make their school better? I mean, that kind of seems like something to achieve. You just do that actually, and then start to find out why are they receiving, how many times we ask them to improve their school. So you're getting more at the why and finding ways that we can actually do things other than just kind of look for numbers.
Well, I do want to offer, we have a secondary representative here in the room, Principal Miller, and I don't know if you're tracking the conversation here, but as it pertains to the data sets that we looked at, specifically around the perception data for students and the approach that your respective team took during the day-to-day, I'm curious in terms of the questions that are being asked and the thought process that was applied when you looked at the data, and maybe that would provide some insight as to the leadership team's thinking as they see this data and plan for next steps. I don't know if that's something that you, to put you on the spot, but are able to speak to.
Yes, just to add a little bit to some of the stuff that has been said, this spring data day was probably one of the most impactful that I have seen. The teams are growing together. I could show you the plan that the high school came up with. We went deeper than we've gone before. And so we not only disaggregated the data, but then we had the conversations about it. But we have each of our what are called department chairs there of our roughly 11 departments. And each of those departments, then we came up with, hey, these are the instructional strategies, high yield instructional strategies that we want to see implemented across the school. But of course you need to take it and you need to make it your own. And then what does that look like? How do you implement it? And then each of those departments now have gone back to their departments and said, this is the focus. We're focusing on these 4 things because we know that they work. And some of the teachers in the room will be like, hey, we need to have really well-defined learning targets. We need to be using it. We need to have, really strong student dialogue, discourse, and they need to be using the vocab in, in their lessons, so they're hearing the words that we're teaching, the brick and mortar words, so they're learning. And I could keep going on, but then, so each of the departments now has taken and they have their individual action plan, and now they're implementing it. And what's really cool is I'm seeing a shift overall, where now the departments are very proud of what they're up to, and the results that they're getting. And so they've asked administrators, come in and see us doing this and giving us feedback and helping us grow. And that synergy is what we're looking for in this whole process. So that would be an example of how we've taken it and we've gone down to that level, and then we're going back. And then when we're in the classrooms, what we're looking for is student outcomes. Do we actually see this implementation in the classroom? Is it leading to increase student growth?
What would you say about the student voice and the student safety aspects that Director Lynn had asked about in terms of those data points, those assessments, and then how the educators and you are looking at that information and thinking about how to either dig deeper into the prompts or in terms of how you respond to what you're seeing?
So when you start looking at the disaggregated data, it's really well defined, where like sense of belonging at the high school, and I think I even showed you a few board meetings ago where we've been really working on this, trying to continue to increase the culture and change our culture. And then you're seeing this in an upward trajectory with this outcome. And then the disaggregated data is very impressive, because then it disaggregates it not only by things like grade level, but then it goes down, male versus female students. It goes down to your major groups, and then it shows here's the standard, and then what groups are not above and below the standard. And so you can start having that conversation. So like, give you a perfect example, sense of belonging at the high school, it is our female students, particularly in 9th grade, that need some extra support. And now we're able to target that and say, hey, these are some of the interventions we're putting in place. And then we're able to see, hopefully in 11 weeks, because we're trying some different interventions here, did we see an outcome, because we're having the students retake that data, and did we see a change in that? And so that is the process, and that's the continual renewal cycle as we're going through this. But I'm hoping that answered your question. So the good thing is that level of data is really helping inform a deeper discussion.
Can I add something on your behalf, Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, so something that he didn't share that he also does that I think connects to what Director Lynn was saying is that to get to that why, or why that might be the case, the high school actually engages their own student voice team or student leadership team to take a look at the data and the results and do their own analysis and feedback on those. I don't know that it's happened yet for this round of data, but it has happened at each data point, and it's something that I think is a real promising practice to make sure that we share back the student voice data with the students, so that they can unpack it and let us know what's really at the heart of what those respondents look like.
So just like one of our plans is actually one of your questions you see there, as somebody asked me as a student how to improve the school. So through our advisory and through this, we actually share all this data with them. And then the students are giving us feedback, and then we're collecting that feedback, and then we're running that back through the leadership team and say, hey, based on the student data and the student feedback, what it is. And then part of it is also, do we see a change when we survey the students again, because we've asked them for this feedback? Do we see a change in that question where we've seen an improvement? Because we're truly intentionally trying to ask them for feedback, how to make the school better. We're having them actually look at the data, and then do they see the changes, and then do we see that reflected in that survey data? So that's like one of our one of our parts of our spring action plan is actually implementing this, and we've now done 2 cycles of this year, and this is brand new for this year.
Awesome.
Little follow-up, has there been any discussion about a prompt that if somebody does say no, they do not feel safe, that they can enter in why?
Into the survey data?
The survey asks, it's a single prompt, and the responses are fixed responses. So I'm trying to remember, is it a continuum, Lauren? I think
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the,
he was asking if someone could add, he was asking
Thank
if, well, correct me if I misunderstood. You were asking about whether or not they could add detail if they answered no to
Yeah, is there
a
a comment
question.
box
Is there a
under the-
comment box where they can
remember.
say why? And we don't have the survey set up that way. We do have things set up in the school to where, and again, this wouldn't necessarily be anonymous, but if a student has a need and is not feeling safe, that we have adults that we're hoping they would connect with and other means for them to get support. But in the survey itself, there's no spot for them to add the details. Did you want to say something?
I just was wondering from Lauren and your perspective if that's ever been a conversation point about offering the comment box, or if that's in terms of how surveys are administered from your perspectives, if that's been a discussion or if there's a particular reason why it's not.
Yeah. Well, I'll say Pleasant Valley, at some point at the start of the year when we were doing, in our first progress monitoring survey, they asked for a open-ended qualitative response feature to the survey. The survey was designed for another purpose. It was really about that quick progress monitoring. There was some discussion about whether or not it'd be valuable, but it would then somewhat interfere with the administration of the survey. And we've had some discussion with the principal around working with the staff to create other easy access for students to express their needs versus using the survey, because the survey itself is anonymous, so a student could provide detailed information. It doesn't necessarily tell us, if we did provide that option, doesn't necessarily tell us who and then how to respond. It's not really a diagnostic tool. It's actually more of a progress monitoring tool for a cohort of students. And so the thinking then was, first of all, if a student's not feeling safe, we want to make sure that they're supported and there's intervention available, assistance, what have you. Survey may not be the best way to do that, especially not a progress monitoring survey. Yeah, I don't know, Lauren, if you have anything to add to that?
I wouldn't, I agree with everything that's been said. Matching purpose with tool is important. So, if the purpose is to get to some root cause or understand perspective, there have been clients that we've worked with who've added 1 to 2 open-ended questions at the end of the full survey, depending on what data point they were looking to gather. The other one, though, in terms of like a reporting tool, there are lots of options out there for student self-reporting or self-reporting tools around like screeners for variety of things, and including feelings of feeling unsafe. So that would be, I think, as Dr. Katsuda was saying, something, if it's a need, right, to kind of be like, wow, if we see that only 50% of our students feel like they have an adult they can go to, what's available to the 50% of students who don't feel that way, that we make sure that they're connected to something. Like that would be a kind of a potential district-wide action or adjustment to make, right, based on the data.
I have a question on these 2 data points, please. Do we have data that is broken down in the same way as question 1 is with the demographic groups? And what I'm curious about is there a correlation between those historically marginalized communities and their feelings of inclusion and empowerment, et cetera, et cetera? And if so, what are we doing to meet that standard?
Great question.
Every student's well-being?
Oh, sorry,
question?
the way we
first
have
section
just
we-
the,
Oh, the goal one.
goal
Okay,
one, yes,
okay.
sorry, goal one, the way we have disaggregated data by demographic group. If we have that as well for goals 2 and 3, and if there's a correlation between the poor performing groups there and their feelings of inclusion and empowerment, and if so, if we've identified that, how are we addressing it, or what are the plans to
Yes.
do that?
Yep. Lauren, do you want to answer that first?
Yeah, I can share. I'll give you the sort of what's happened to date. So when we come together for the data summit, each of the schools are given a data packet that includes the disaggregation of all of the data points, as you're suggesting. So they have the survey results broken down by various demographics. They also have comparison between previous year, like cohort comparison. So last year's third graders to this year's fourth graders, last year's fourth graders to this year's fifth graders, so they can kind of track to see if those student groups are growing in their sense of connection or cohesion. And I would say that there's a range in terms of what the data says at different school sites in terms of like very clearly, across all 4 data points, it might be like, wow, fourth grade at this school is really, there's something going on here that we need to pay attention to. And so each of the schools, I think as Mr. Miller had shared with the example of like 9th grade female students, is that, comes up with, identifies those actions based on what they see in their individual data. Currently, I don't think that we've yet pulled together a district-wide disaggregated data report on the survey. However, for the progress monitoring survey, but for the end of year survey, which is coming out, I think it's in process now, the spring survey, that will be disaggregated district-wide. And you all will receive that as well. So you'll see the breakdown by different student groups, et cetera. So you will have that coming forth soon.
Yeah. And in response to your question, I would have to refresh my memory and go back to all the disaggregated data sets for every school. And there may be some outliers and some variance there. But generally speaking, there is a correlation between belonging and academic outcomes. And if you disaggregate the data, likely, and I'd have to go back to speak with some definitive tone here, or response, but likely there's strong correlation. Correlation doesn't equal causation. However, it's important for us to recognize that, and that is part of the work of the school teams when they get together, is to make those connections and ask those hard questions and get down to some of the root causes and then develop their systems or their approaches or their practices accordingly. But I would say yes with some tentativeness, because there are some outliers. So for example, some folks might assume that our emerging multilingual students who receive ELD services might not show up in the higher tender group. They're among our highest attenders, right? So there are some unusual outliers there, but generally speaking, academically, when you look at the social emotional outcomes here, there is some correlation.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting to see all that data broken down like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll go to the next goal, which is goal 4. And this is going to look very similar to goal 1 in terms of what data we're looking at. It's the math and ELA data for the remaining grades 4 through 11. So you have students' achievement by grade level on the STAR assessment in reading. And so there are, modest gains in several grade levels, and then some, I would say, modest declines as well in some of those grade levels. And the one thing that I will name is that the comparison for the high school data, we didn't have the November STAR data, so it's actually looking at OSAS to STAR. So I just want to make a note of that. I recognize that that's problematic, and we brought that point up earlier. So then you'll see it broken down by student group, and then also in math. And math is, more across the board. We're seeing declines or, steady state. So there's your STAR pieces for these grade levels. And I'll do the last data point because there's just one on the last page that's updated. So the ninth graders on track data, this is around students graduating with the skills necessary to thrive. So looking at how many students after ninth grade, what percentage of students are on track. And so last school year, 23-24, at the end of the year, 80% of the ninth graders were on track. And that means they've earned at least 6 credits. And if you look at the end of trimester 1, we'd be looking to see if they've earned, I believe it's 2 credits, at least 2 credits. And then at the end of trimester 2, it would be at least 4 credits. So that's the overall percentage of where we are at this year. So I will pause there and see if there's any questions regarding these last 2 data pieces that maybe haven't been elevated yet.
Yeah, so this is a tough one. So it looks like the students are earning credits, but they're not meeting the state standard. So why? I mean, the general consensus is why, but, that's the tough question to ask. And I don't know if there's an answer in this room today, but that's what we need to figure out.
Excellent.
I had a question on goal number 5 between the 4-year and 5-year graduation rate. Is there something that we're doing from an education perspective, maybe at the school level or the district level, that's increasing that number as much, or is it just kind of natural matriculation? Do we have data to back up that increase?
In terms of the 4-year versus 5-year?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the 5-year is going to naturally be higher than the 4-year because the students have an additional year to finish the credits that they need to successfully complete. So some students just aren't on a 4-year trajectory, but can complete the 5-year, if that tracks your question.
Yeah, it was just if there was something, if it was matriculation and just growth as an individual, or if there was something extra or taking place that got that number higher.
Yeah. Yeah, and Director Harden, to your question before, I think that's been a running theme of some of the discussions that we've had over the last few years, and I agree with you. It's the content standards versus what's being instructed versus what's being assessed versus what's happening on assessments like Smarter Balanced, and then how credit is being assigned. There's a mismatch in all of that. I don't want to normalize it by saying it's not Centennial specific, but that's not an issue for Centennial specifically. That's a more global education perspective and something that we need to address and solve in the local context.
Yeah, there's some significant work and some significant steps to take to get there. And one would be that we would make sure our instruction standards-based and that there's standards-based grading, which gets to what you're speaking to, some alignment between credits earned as an indicator of knowledge and proficiency versus completion of assignments or attending class, which sometimes is what influences grades, right? And so what grades measure is different than what the test measures, and there needs to be some alignment with that. And that's key for a lot of schools that have made progress in terms of graduating highly skilled students who are ready for life, and that's some important work to dig into, right? So
You just went down a list of things. Do you remember what they were?
Yeah.
Will you run down them again?
Yeah, so you've got the standards of what's intended to be instructed, what's actually being instructed. And so I can break that down
Yep.
even further too, to say there's the content standards for the grade level, and then you experience the students who may or may not have the skills to access that content. And then what does the educator do with that? Do they teach the content standards at that grade level, or do they attempt to remediate to build skill to get to that content standard? And if they attempt to remediate, what are they compromising, or what's the opportunity cost of the fact that they're remediating versus teaching grade level content because of the level of the students that they're experiencing as they come in? So that's a whole thing. And then you have the Smarter Balance assessment that is taken at the high school level in 11th grade. At the lower levels, it's taken annually. And so that'll assess and measure some things. But I guess the question then becomes, how do you assign the grade? So is effort incorporated? Is work completion? Is there extra credit given? And is any of that relevant to the content standards at that grade level? Because the course may instruct something, but is that to the rigor and degree of what the assessment is via Smarter Balanced or STAR or whatever else it is? So there's a whole lot of, there's the intention, and then there's what happens in the classrooms, and those things don't always track, and that's being evidenced by the mismatch that you see between graduation rates, assessment results, completion rates, all of that. So
Here's why I ask. I am not an education expert, but what I am really good at is relationship and determining. One of the things that I've learned in my career is that it's really about the relationships that the students make. We can talk about all of these things, but if there is not someone at the school that they can connect with, then it's really then it makes me wonder, are they even paying attention to the questions on the survey? I could go down a rabbit hole of I love qualitative data. So I'm what's the temperature of the room when you're giving it to them and the time of year? Is it before lunch or after lunch, right? I mean, there's all of these things. But I think that one of the things that I think is really important to remember is that at the end of the day, there's all of that, but we still need to have solid relationships with our kids to be able to get them to engage. I feel, and I think that belonging data speaks to that a little bit. And, knowing, I know that not every teacher is going to connect with every student in their class, and not, so then who, is it the PE teacher? Is it the music teacher? Are schools taking any sort of approach, hey, are there kids that nobody has a relationship with that we should figure out who can make that relationship? I just feel it's so touchy-feely. And it's not a good, strong data point, but I just want to speak to relationship, because I think that the impact that has for students and the way that they take on ownership of their education is huge.
Well, I appreciate that, and I would absolutely agree with that. Students' sense of connection and belonging, their relationship with each other in the class, and their understanding of themselves is the foundation of which we build the house of learning on. Without that, learning is significantly impacted, which is why we have it as a critical aspect of our strategic plan. We recognize that. And there is a tremendous amount of research that shows that, right? So I really appreciate you saying that, and appreciate your questions and consideration and support as we continue to examine what we're doing and critically examine what we're doing and move forward with our plan. So, yeah.
I just want to say, Rose, that's the entire struggle of an educator. So, I don't think anybody's arguing with anything that anybody in the room is saying, because yes, and it's all of it. So, I mean, this is I think why this is also growing pains, because it's holding educators and instructors accountable for strategies that maybe are new to them, while still holding them accountable for relationships, while still collaborating and making sure your assessments match, while figuring out how to do standards with assessments, with grading. It's it's yes and through all of this. So I don't think any one piece is more important. It just, the struggle is it all has to happen at the same time. So, thank you and good night.
Yeah, this was a really promising report. I think that one of the things that I'm most excited about was the buy-in that you guys talk about in these data summits and getting folks to the point where they're like, yeah, this isn't okay, and we want to make a change, and what are we doing? And having that come from inside the house is great. Good work. Thank you.
All right. Thank you and good night.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren.
All right. Do we need 5? Let's take 5.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
I love it when everything works. Welcome back, everyone. 7:57. We will continue on with our agenda this evening with the superintendent's report. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Superintendent Owens.
Thank you, Chair Salowski. Greetings, board members. It is my pleasure and privilege to share with you this update about happenings in the Centennial School District. As I have mentioned before, I am making an intentional effort to point out the artwork in the district office display at the front entrance of the building, which changes periodically to feature the work of students in our schools. This month, you'll see the artwork from students at Centennial Middle School under the direction of teacher Sydney Peck. On the top left, you will see grid portraits from the Intro to Art classes. On the bottom are portraits from the Advanced Art classes. And finally, on the right are alla prima landscapes from the Advanced Art classes. I welcome you to take a closer look on your way out this evening. There are a few celebrations in the month of April. The first is Arab American Heritage Month. First recognized federally in 2019, signed into state law in 2021, this month provides an opportunity to honor the histories, cultures, traditions, and achievements of Arab Americans in our community and throughout our country. Each April, schools across the country celebrate School Library Month. First celebrated in 1985, School Library Month honors the contributions of school libraries and library staff to support student literacy, learning, and achievement. Please join me in thanking each of our Centennial School District library managers for your work in connecting our students to these critical resources that are offered in our school libraries. April is World Autism Awareness Month, a time dedicated to fostering understanding and acceptance of individuals with autism. First recognized in the U.S. in 1988, Autism Awareness Month promotes acceptance, advocacy, inclusivity, and support. Originally, in the April Superintendent's Update newsletter and on our website, we had a different graphic with a puzzle piece. However, a Centennial parent who had read the newsletter contacted me to let me know of the problematic history and meaning associated with the symbol and suggested instead using the infinity symbol, which represents the limitless potential of individuals with autism and is reflected here on the screen, and is combined with rainbow coloring, symbolizing the diversity and beauty of the autism community.
The puzzle piece also suggests that there's something missing.
Something missing, or that it's a puzzling concern. I'm glad somebody's reading the newsletter. And the apparently the infinity symbol can also be shown in gold, which is AU is the periodic table symbol for gold, and so that was part of the reason that was chosen as well. I responded, when you know better, you do better. Yesterday, our district CTE guru and CVA principal, Dr. Zach Ramberg, and I joined other key community leaders from business, education, government, and service providers in the region for the second Advancing Semiconductors in East County meeting with the shared goal of supporting economic development in our region. Convened again by Mount Hood Community College President Dr. Lisa Scari, at this meeting, the group reviewed the mission and vision and worked toward two goal areas that were established in the initial meeting, particularly around how to build a stronger connection between K-12 education and the semiconductor workforce. In Centennial, we know that registering a child for kindergarten is an exciting time for families. We also know it can bring up a lot of questions, which is why we're hosting our annual Connect to Kindergarten event on Thursday, May 1st, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at each of our 6 elementary schools across the district. During the event, attendees can meet the principal and teachers, learn what to expect during kindergarten, tour the school, explore a school bus, visit a kindergarten classroom, receive information, and register for the Early Kindergarten Transition, or the EKT program, the dates of which will be available in May. School tours will happen between 5 and 6, and online registration assistance will be available between 6 and 7. Any child who will be 5 years of age or on or before September 1st is eligible for enrollment in kindergarten at their designated neighborhood school. Our district website contains information and instruction on how one can register their child online. You'll see a variety of civic buildings here on the screen. Over the last several weeks, our government relations efforts, coordinated by Interim Government Affairs Administrator Pooja Bhatt, has continued advocating on behalf of East County school districts, including Centennial, across the state, county, and city governmental levels. At the state level, collective efforts have included engaging in legislative discussions on key issues such as, obviously, education funding, early literacy, summer learning, and special education. This includes providing testimony on ODE's budget bill, pushing back against proposed cuts to school safety and prevention services, and monitoring important legislation like House Bill 2007, which is the summer learning, House Bill 3040, early literacy, and House Bill 3435, universal school meals. We're also working to educate lawmakers about House Bill 3652, which proposes making class size a mandatory subject to bargaining. On the county front, we've submitted East County budget priorities to Chair Vega Peterson and are preparing for an upcoming April 18th meeting with Commissioner Vince Jones-Dixon, focused on relationship building and reinforcing our shared budget concerns. Coordination is ongoing for consistent district communications related to county budget proposals. Finally, we have submitted a formal priorities letter to Portland Mayor Keith Wilson and have scheduled a meeting for him on April 29th. Engagement with City Council continues, especially around the SUN programming and broader city budget. Testimony has been delivered during council budget listening sessions, with more planned to ensure education priorities may remain visible. These efforts reflect a coordinated East County approach to elevating education needs and ensuring our students and schools are considered in critical policy and budget decisions. Finally, yesterday morning, 47 of our first, second, and third grade students from Meadows Elementary had the opportunity to visit the Sheraton Portland Airport Hotel to see some of the behind-the-scenes operations of the hotel and hear from employees in the kitchen, maintenance, front desk, and housekeeping about all of the tasks involved with running a busy hotel. Even more exciting was that each student was able to select a new bike and bike lock through a generous donation from Paulin Hotels. The bikes were delivered this afternoon for Meadows students to take home. This bike donation event was coordinated by our new Safe Routes to School coordinator, Ian Reese, and Angie Darby of Paulin Hotels, who is also a volunteer assistant cheer coach at Centennial High School. With that, I invite any questions or comments you might have, and that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Owens. At this point, are there any questions or comments from the board?
One quick question on kindergarten day.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this might be a school level question. I was just thinking of one when we saw that slide. But is there opportunity for parents of existing kindergartners, that people have gone through it already? 'Cause I remember when we did our orientation last year, we were 6 minutes late. And I kid you not, 6 minutes late to the orientation. They're like, you missed the parents' portion already. And does anybody want to fill us in then? There was just a general kind of, nope, your kids are ours now for the next few hours. Come and get them when we're done. So, and I don't know if that was just a programming mishap or whatever it might be, but if there was a way to strengthen the incoming, programming at all.
So that it lasts longer than 6 minutes?
Especially if it starts at 5, because a lot of people may not even be able to get there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I noticed that the start time was a little bit different because it used to be a 6 to 7
Yeah.
event. And so I would say overall, and I can't speak to this completely because I haven't been intimately involved in the coordination of the event, but there's a desire to build in more consistency in programmings, because over the years, what it has been consistent has been the date and time. What hasn't been is in terms of what the program involves. Sometimes it's just simply an open house. Sometimes it consists of a presentation by the principal followed by meet the teacher. So there's an attempt to bring the programming into consistency, but I'll take the feedback back to the team that's planning it, because obviously, regardless of whether you're there right on time, you want to be able to get the information to help support and start off on the right foot.
Thank you. It was a mystery for a few days.
Anything else? Fabulous. All right, let's look at some confirmation items. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at them, and I would love to hear a motion.
Move to accept the confirmation items as presented.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Look at that. We have no board action items this evening, so I will just jump right ahead to future agenda items.
I'll start. I've got quite the list. So our next board meeting is our board work session. It's scheduled to be virtual on April 23rd, 2025. We're tentatively planning for the following future agenda items, which is our first budget committee meeting is scheduled at 6 p.m., followed by the work session scheduled to start directly after at 7:30. We have recognition of Teacher Appreciation Week. Our integrated guidance plan for 2025-27 is to be presented. The submission date is April 30th, so we need to make sure that that's done before then. We have planned the presentation of the 25-26 school year calendars for the board's review and consideration, as well as the accompanying 25-26 board meeting calendar. And we also are looking at the 25-26 student fees. An update to the construction excise tax rate, updated meal prices for 25-26, and last but not least, recommend and appoint district equity committee members. Should be ready for that time as well. What we probably will not have because of time is any more policies, just because that's a pretty packed meeting.
When do we expect to have the spring data and the ability to review that, similar to what we did tonight?
Can you go by a microphone?
We'll look at the calendar, but it would be, we'd have the data after the spring data summit that we're holding with the staff. I think that's in mid-May, but let me get back to you all and I'll share that. And I think we have a board report right around that time.
The spring data summit is scheduled for May 29th.
Oh, okay. So there's going to be a board report around whatever board meeting is before or after that one. Probably after.
We
that
should
one.
probably aim for before, because the only board meeting in June is pretty late in June, and you probably want to see that before, I'm imagining.
I'd like to see it before the fall.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Yes, for
We'll make
sure.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we pre-scheduled that. We'll double check and make sure it's on the calendar. Mhm. Yeah, we set some dates. Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, let's get back to you on that one, because I'm seeing the board meeting for that month is on the 18th, which may be a little bit sooner than we're able to pull it together. So either the May meeting late or the June meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other? Yes, please.
Just an announcement, at the community, Centennial Community Association, we had ODOT present on the safety improvements that are coming to Outer Powell. So I brought that information here tonight if anybody's wondering. It's between 122nd and up to 174th. I can show you here on the map. So if anybody's interested, I have the information, so just want to let you know. And we don't have to pass it along to our Safe Routes to School new coordinator because he was at the meeting. Yeah.
Anything else for the good? Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Chair.